Imagine a world still reeling from one great war, desperately clinging to peace. That was the 1930s. But underneath the surface, tensions were simmering, ready to boil over into the most destructive conflict in human history. World War II. So how did it all begin? It wasn't a single event, but a domino effect of aggression and appeasement. In Germany, a man named Adolf Hitler rose to power, fueled by anger over the harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles that ended World War I. He promised to restore Germany's glory, and his Nazi party began to rearm and expand. They marched into the Rhineland, then Austria, then Czechoslovakia. Each time, the world watched, hoping that giving him a little would prevent him from taking a lot. This policy was called appeasement. They thought, surely he'll stop now, but he didn't. The breaking point, the moment the dominoes truly started to fall, was September 1st, 1939. Germany invaded Poland. This time, Britain and France, Poland's allies, had to act. They declared war on Germany, and the Second World War officially began. What followed was a whirlwind of conquest. Germany's blitzkrieg, or lightning war strategy, was devastating. Using fast-moving tanks and overwhelming air power, they stormed across Europe. Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, France, all fell in a matter of months. By 1940, Britain stood almost alone, heroically defending itself during the Battle of Britain. But the war wasn't just in Europe. In the Pacific, the Empire of Japan had its own expansionist ambitions. They had already invaded China and were eyeing the resource-rich territories of Southeast Asia. Their collision course with the United States came to a head on December 7, 1941. A surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. It was a day, as President Franklin D. Roosevelt said, that would live in infamy. The United States, a sleeping giant, was now wide awake and fully in the war. The conflict had gone truly global, splitting the world into two camps. The Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan, and the Allies, led by Great Britain, the Soviet Union, and the United States. The next few years were a brutal, grinding struggle. From the frozen Eastern Front, where Germany and the Soviet Union fought a titanic battle in Stalingrad, to the deserts of North Africa, to the island-hopping campaigns in the Pacific, the sheer scale is almost impossible to comprehend. Millions of soldiers and civilians were caught in the crossfire. The disruption was total. Entire cities were flattened by bombing raids. London, Dresden, Tokyo. Economies were completely reoriented for war production. Women entered the workforce in unprecedented numbers, building the planes, tanks, and ships needed for the front lines. Rationing became a part of daily life. Food, gasoline, even clothing were strictly limited. But the darkest shadow cast by the war was the Holocaust. The Nazis' systematic state-sponsored genocide of 6 million Jews and millions of other minorities stands as one of humanity's most horrific atrocities. So how did it end? The tide began to turn in 1944. On June 6, D-Day, the Allies launched the largest amphibious invasion in history, landing on the beaches of Normandy, France. This opened up a crucial second front in Western Europe. Pushing from the west while the Soviets pushed from the east, they squeezed the German war machine. On April 30th, 1945, with Soviet troops closing in on his bunker in Berlin, Adolf Hitler committed suicide. A week later, Germany officially surrendered. Victory in Europe Day, or VE Day, was celebrated with massive relief and joy across the continent. But the war wasn't over. Japan fought on fiercely in the Pacific. The U.S. faced the grim prospect of a full-scale invasion of Japan, which was estimated to cost over 1 million Allied lives. In a controversial and world-altering decision, U.S. President Harry Truman authorized the use of a new, terrifying weapon. In August 1945, atomic bombs were dropped on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The devastation was absolute. Faced with this unimaginable power and a Soviet invasion of Manchuria, Japan surrendered on August 15, 1945. World War II was finally over. The aftermath was staggering. Over 70 million people were dead. Nations were in ruins and the world map was redrawn. The war gave birth to the nuclear age and the Cold War, a decades-long standoff between the two new superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. It led to the creation of the United Nations, an organization founded with the hope of preventing such a catastrophe from ever happening again. The world we live in today was forged in the fires of that 6-year conflict, a constant, sobering reminder of the price of war and the preciousness of peace.